Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Titusville CRA meeting of August 14th at 5:30. We do have a quorum. I'll call it to order. Is there anybody that would like to say the invocation? Not seeing anybody. If you will join me in a moment of silence. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business is approval of the minutes from July 10th. 2018 for the CRA.
I move that we approve the minutes. That date said.
July 10th, 2018. Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion, corrections? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign. Passes unanimously. Are there any special recognitions or presentations, sir?
No, sir.
Next item is old business. Mr. City Manager.
Yes, sir. CRA Building Grant Programs, Policies, and Procedures. This item was tabled at the July 10th, 2018 CRA meeting to allow staff to research and bring back recommendations as requested by the board. Revisions to address the CRA board comments to the grant policies and procedure documents have been made with underlined strike-through. Staff can go through these revisions in detail at this meeting if you so desire. Staff's recommendation is that you approve the draft policy and procedures for the following: CRA Building Grants Program, a new permit and impact fee incentive program, a revised commercial interior renovation incentive program, and a reactivated and revised downtown commercial beautification program.
Thank you, sir. Anybody want to go first?
I'll go first.
I'll go first. Oh, good.
Oh, sorry. Sorry, Kurt. I read through it. I appreciate Tim's listening to us and inserting some of the language we asked for. I liked it. I thought it'd work. So thank you very much.
Mr. Leedy? Member Leedy?
Oh, gosh, I hate to be contrary to... I read through it and liked most of it, but you put in a new thing that this board never talked about, and that is, as I read this, doling out the money over a 3-year period. And I totally don't understand that. If the person gets the grant, why aren't we giving them the money? Tenants don't. They need the money to start up. And if I read this correctly, you're proposing 50% of the grant award to be paid when they move in, 25% at the end of the first year, and 25% at the end of the second. And I can't support that. I think they should get the money. That's over 3 budget periods. Doesn't make sense to me. Now, I think that what we're trying to do is minimize the risk of the city's money.
Don't trade me.
But, so I'd like to hear from the staff what their thinking was on that.
Well, the thinking was, if you look at your minutes, there were comments regarding recommendations of having clawbacks if buildings were not occupied within 5 months from the leased property, 4 months to acquire a certificate of occupancy for a total of 9 months. Person, had to have a certificate of occupancy for a business for 2 years, etc. So it becomes very difficult to claw back money when they've already been awarded it. So the only way I think you could do it is do it at stage payouts where you meet certain milestones if that's the way you want to go. I mean, personally, the easiest way is it's built, they get a CO, and then boom, one and done, you get your check. But the direction I got from the last CRA board meeting was that you wanted it staged out and having occupancy as the criteria for the staged payouts.
I think that, I read the minutes, I did read the minutes, and I think that was a suggestion by Member Behringer, and I'm not sure anyone disagreed with that, but, you know, it just seems to me that this is a hard situation because whether it's the owner or the tenant, and the risk to the city is probably the tenant. Question is it to the owner? Because you can lien the property, you can do all sorts of stuff that if occupancy isn't done. But I think this should be open for some discussion with the board because I'm just
That's what we're
can't.
doing, sir.
Pardon me?
That's what we're doing.
I just don't think that we can pay it out over a 3-year period. I don't think we've ever done that, and I'm not sure if Member Behringer really thought that's the way it should be, so.
Member Nelson?
Well, I think that was something we talked about last time because we were trying to make sure that we were trying to encourage the landlords to make sure those buildings were occupied. And we thought this might be a way to do it. I don't know if it's the best way to do it, but it seemed to be a start. So I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I sort of felt like we need to make a start in getting these buildings occupied.
Since I don't see any other numbers up there, I'm going to join in at this point. I kind of agree with Kurt. I think that the purpose of it, of this whole program, is to get people to take a building, renovate it, and then lease it or rent it. Right. I don't see where this helps in that at all. First, as Member Leedy already pointed out, the payback is just very, very confusing. It's actually a 7-year because it says at the end of everything, you know, in the second year you get 50%, and then it's 5 years after that that you finally are awarded the money, even though you have that 50%, you don't have the other 25 and the other 25. So it's very, very confusing. As again, Member Leedy already pointed out, the money is needed when the people come into the building. That's when they're short of money and they want to get it going right, and that's going to give them more of a chance of renting it if they have the equipment they need or whatever else is needed in the place that they're fixing up. And if they don't have the money, they can't do that. So we're putting them in a bad position instead of a good position. As far as I can see, it doesn't encourage anything. It discourages anybody from taking the loan and getting the building done, or taking the grant, rather. And I think the present system is better. And, you know, we can encourage maybe in other ways people to lease, which we can discuss, but I don't see this as a positive action at all. I appreciate that staff was looking at what was asked of them, and this is what either you came up with or you saw, I don't know how, but I don't see this as a positive thing at all. Anybody else? Go right ahead.
When you guys were drafting this, did you look at any other CRAs to see with similar grant programs if they've had criteria like this?
Most of them pay out at the time that the building is completed or the project is completed. I was involved in one many years ago where it was staged payout, where it was a business would come in, not new construction, but if a business came in, they would get a percentage the time the business moved into the building. Mm-hmm. Then if they stayed a year, they got the 25%, and if they stayed another 6 months, they got the rest of the money.
Right.
So that's what that was based on.
Okay.
Where was that? Was that in a big city or something?
No, it was not in a big city.
No, okay. I'm just questioning. Member Leedy?
Yeah, let me just follow up one final point to the board. I've been involved in this all my life, and the question is who's going to ask really for the grants? Is it going to be the landowner, or is it going to be the tenant? And Walt jogged my memory in the sense that if it's the tenant, in most cases for our city, not the big city, not the Starbucks, not those people, but these people want to start a business and they're going to go out and get a loan. And they're going to try to make it a go of it in our city. And along the line, everyone's taking a risk. The bank, the landlord, the tenant. We don't know if he's got a great idea and a better mousetrap and whatever he's going to do, but it just seems to me this is kind of there's no incentive. I agree with the mayor that we can't. If it was the owner getting the grant, then you're leaning his property. But I think we need to. I just think. I got to go with a no on this unless somebody's got a better idea.
Vice Chairman?
Thank you. So I'm comfortable with the clawbacks, but I hear you on it defeats the purpose of the initial load up front on any business is always a heavy capital investment. It doesn't matter what you do. So I get that 50% it doesn't lend the capacity that probably some of the places need, and I get that. My greatest concern, and I'm definitely very open to recommendations, but number one, thank you, because I think that this is exactly what we had pointed as direction. So I'm supportive of it as written, but I'm flexible if it's dead. So, but at the end of it, my end state of what I'm hoping for is that there's two things. I guess number one is, as a board, we always maintain the ability to deny a project that we would consider bad, and so that can always be disapproved, although I don't know how often that's ever happened if they meet the qualifying parameters. Second part is I'm very concerned with somebody coming in, getting money, not going for a few years or not maintaining operation for a few years. So whatever way that widget can get worked, I'm very open to. But my concern is at the end of it, if 3 years go by, the investment into the business is $30,000, whatever the case may be from the city, for that amount, and it's an arbitrary number, that at the end of 3 years, they're good. And I just want to, that is concerning to me as written. So that's the part where I have the most concern. The other part is that if, for instance, if I was maybe not ethical, I just want to make sure that what I wouldn't do is put a shell business in, right? So I come here, I pull a business permit, it's for office XYZ that I have no intent of using, but I pay $100 to file that. And then when I put that in there, whether I do a certificate of occupancy and I put a desk and I put a chair in there, and that's it. And at the end of it, that desk and chair sit in there and open that grant up in order to use that money. And that's kind of my concern, is that there's no functioning business in there that is helping our community. I guess that's my biggest concern.
Tim, you want to answer that? I mean,
I think the intent of particularly the new construction and the interior commercial grants, you're basically getting bricks and mortar that's going to be there. It's going to increase the tax rate, and that's accomplishing what you're wanting to do, increasing the TIF.
and they don't get it till it's completed. Right?
That's right. Once the
It's
project's
it's a
completed,
reimbursement
then they
loan.
get it.
They
Now,
can't spend a
the
dollar.
facade grant, I think the previous CRA felt that there should have been the 5-year where they have to maintain it, and we'll get into this later tonight, but you're required to pay back if it's sold, because some of those that could be said that, oh, you're just going to do a quick fix, make a quick profit and get out. And so I think they had that payback requirement. The other ones were to encourage construction of, bricks, mortar, pipes, electrical lines, et cetera. We weren't really into the occupancy, and that wasn't the original intent of these grants.
But that's my concern.
Right.
Because I think we have had enough properties in the downtown area that have been sat on for a substantial amount of time. And I don't believe that just by allowing for more money to be pushed into one of the building is necessarily going to convert somebody to actually using it for a business. I think for some folks, they would just hold on to it and then wait for the market to go up and then sell it at an appropriate time. That's my greatest concern. And so,
But it's not cash money, so.
Right.
It's only for reimbursement of what they've already done. So the building has been improved.
Sure,
In
I get
any
that.
case. I don't know how many people are going to sit around. I wouldn't. I don't know anybody in the investment business that wants a building that's empty. So I think getting them in there, and these are not, these aren't tycoons. These are people who, in most cases, want to open a small business. And, I want to encourage them to do that. I also want to encourage them to, if they're not running the business, to rent it. But I think that goes along with the, I can't imagine anybody not wanting to rent it, as was pointed out, even if it's for less than they may like, to get a cash flow out of it. So I don't think that's a major issue. Member Nelson, you were next.
Thank you. Mr. Ford, you said that you worked with an ordinance that allowed a payout at a year and a half, correct?
It was a business recruitment program where if a business moved into the CRA or expanded in the CRA, they would get a certain amount of money per square foot that they were of that business or the business expansion. And so in order for that, and again, that was geared towards luring a business in, that they would get at milestones for having the business in the CRA. It was not for construction.
Okay.
So.
How did it work? What'd you think? Did it work?
It was, I wouldn't say it was overly successful, but it wasn't a failure either. I mean, it helped some businesses come in. It helped offset some impact fees that one business had to pay. So, but it was okay. It wasn't anything great, but again, it wasn't a failure either. So it was lukewarm, average.
So it's something that maybe at some point we should think about. Would it be worth it to think about something like that?
That's something to think about. I know we'd have to make sure that it meets the CRA plan. Right now, I don't think we have anything in the plan about having grants for businesses relocating, but we do have for construction and improvements to buildings to lure business in.
Okay.
So.
I was curious about that. Thank you.
Member Diesel?
Yeah, what's your concern, or is there a concern about 100% of the grant up front?
I have no concern. Staff originally approved 100% up front. It was at the last meeting that there was the suggestions of the occupancy from the audience and from members of the board. So we thought the direction was to go ahead and revise the programs.
Okay, and I would say that as I read this, I felt like you were at least moving towards what some of you were hearing at the last meeting. So I took this as they're just trying to move towards what they're hearing. As I hear Member Leedy and the mayor speak, I totally can see where it would make sense to give it up front. And Mayor, I think you've got an awful lot of experience with this. It would make no sense from what you're saying, and I can understand that, to hold it back when they need it up front. But I understand where you were going, too.
Yeah, it would not be up front. It would be at the end of construction.
Okay, I get that.
Okay.
Right. I do. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I pretty much said mine, but we have a perfect example out there that people that had a building and had a tough time renting it, but they kept people in there. They worked very hard themselves on it. I was in there many times when both of you were there, under pretty bad situations and economies and everything else. So it didn't do them any good to have it sitting there doing nothing, so they tried very hard to keep the operation going, and they did for many years. So I think that's a perfect example of it. Member Leedy?
Yeah, just to conclude my thoughts and what Member Diesel was mentioning, again, I think that if the grant, if one of the concerns is what Member Behringer addressed his concern just a little bit, if you're a land, I think the mayor's right on. If you own the property and you apply for the grant, you do the improvements, and the city can lien it, your bank isn't going to like that. And so we've got them with a lien, and there's a payback schedule in here that we're going to deal with later, right? I mean, it's that payback schedule over 5 years or whatever it was if they sell the building. If it's the tenant going for the grant, then it just seems to me, I didn't read it in here, Tim, I don't know if you've got it in there, you could probably tie a bona fide lease to the grant, that he's got a lease with the landlord, and he's got a business plan, and you guys make that judgment. If that's helpful, Member Behringer. I mean, but if it's a guy just putting in a desk and something, I agree with Mary's. The property's been improved.
Well,
You know?
if it's a tenant, the owner has to underwrite it, right? I mean, he
Well,
has
the owner has to sign off on the applicant and be part of the
yeah.
agreement.
So it doesn't go away. It stays with the building, it stays with the owner.
The facade grant is the only one that has, or the beautification grant is the only one that has the 5-year payback requirement. The other two grants, it's really, unless the building is destroyed and they don't rebuild it, then they have to pay us back.
Okay. I see no other lights, so somebody, I don't know whether we either make a motion or just say no or say
We
yes,
have-
one or the other.
I think we have a card.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. Okay, she sent me a note, too. Please call the card.
Tom Altiff.
Tom Oltiff, 410 South Hopkins, Titusville. I've been coming to these meetings for years and years and years. I don't know of one instance where the grants did not go to the property owner. And we're in the same place we've always been in. The last two grants that were given are two property owners who have done, I assume, the renovations that they were supposed to, and they have not leased their property. They have done nothing with their property. And you have to have, I mean, I don't care what the incentive is, but there has to be an incentive to encourage people to lease their property. They might not get what they want, and I'll give you an example of one of them. A gentleman is having to vacate a building, and so he's been looking for a new location. He goes to the owner of one of these grants and asks if he can lease the building. The owner says, sure, for $3,000. 1,100 square feet, $3,000. Now, is anybody going to do that in their right mind in Titusville? No. That doesn't make business sense. The last two that were the last two grants given, those buildings are vacant. That's all I have to say. It's not working. Yet we have to come up with some way of forcing property owners, and they're getting grants, to do something to lease their properties. They can't be charging New Smyrna and Cocoa Village rates in Titusville, and that's why everything is vacant. Now, there are some landowners, property owners, that are charging reasonable rates, and I applaud them, and they're filling up their buildings. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Altiff. Go ahead.
I think I asked this to you last meeting, and I wanted to see if you agree with what I'm going to say. it seems to me that we've been talking since January, and I remember Behringer talking about Houston and the signs. Now, I'm wrapping this into the grant program, but what you're saying is, I didn't see it on the agenda tonight, but that is, do you believe we should be tying together comprehensively, not only this grant program, but a program that encourages these landlords, whether we change some ordinances or code things, do you think that should be all tied up together?
Yes.
I do too.
And I would like to see grants going to new businesses that are moving into the area. And I'd like to see property owners accept that and give these new businesses permission to receive those funds so that they can help set up a business in these vacant buildings. I'm 100% in favor of that. But as I said, I have not seen one case where the money has gone to a new business moving into the area.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I'm not sure who the money went to in every case. I know that it has to be signed up.
I'm sorry, we have another card.
It was late? Okay, let him speak.
Gretchen McMichael. I'm Gretchen McMichael, 330 South Washington. What I'm hearing is that we have two parties and two options. We have carrot and stick for both the owners, and we have carrot and stick for the tenants. You get to decide how you apply the carrot and the stick to either the tenant or the owner. But a quick story. My mom used to make a ham. She would cut the end of it before she'd put it in the oven, and I asked her why. And she said, well, because my mom did it. When I asked my grandmother why she did it, she said because her mother did it. So we went to the nursing home, and I thought, I'm going to ask her anyway. So I asked my great-grandmother why she cut off the end of the ham before she baked it. And she said, well, my pan was too small. So basically, what I'm hearing is that's because we've done it this way. I would like you to entertain the idea of finding another way, making it a high priority for the CRA, that we either apply a carrot or a stick to the tenant, or a carrot and a stick to the owner, or both. It is important to us. We are facing empty buildings. We have people that come from New Smyrna and say, wow, how do you make it down here? So we are asking you, and thanks to the staff for going through all of that, we really do appreciate it. We are asking you to make this a priority. We're asking you to make this something that is high on your list of to-do. If it takes another study, if it takes another way of looking at it, we would really appreciate it. But it needs done. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. That's what we're doing. We're looking for another way. And we're in disagreement whether this is the way or not, but we are looking for another way. And I heard that story before, by the way. Well, I think the economy is changing too, because we do have some of the businesses that are not open yet. There are people who have leased the property, and they're working on it now. So there are things happening, and I think as we get more and more of the jobs coming in and the people on the trails coming in, I think it's going to provide what is needed to make the downtown come alive, and that's customers. Well, you're all losing sight of the fact that a business runs on profit, or should, and what's going to make them work is customers. You know, we can make all the rules we want. If they don't have customers, they're not going to stay in business. So that's the direction I I feel we're going in. And if we can encourage that, which certainly the city is trying to do, that'll take care of the problem right there. The problem we're having right now is we have had some bad experiences, but we've had some bad economies too. I don't think anything would have changed no matter what we did to any degree up to this point, but things are getting better now. I know you don't feel that way, but I can guarantee it, and I will guarantee it. It's going to happen. I see another light up. Member Barringer?
Yeah, thank you. And I'd offer maybe a possible meet in the middle, but I can understand, I understand perspectives. So one would be a possible adjustment of percentage and timeline. So if it's 55, 25, 25, and the purpose is that the 50 is not enough.
That's 105.
I'm sorry, 50, 25, and 25. That'd be, my apologies. That would be 100. So if the idea is that that's spread too far out or doesn't allow a business to utilize, kind of get over the hump on capital, shrink it to 2 and then do a 75-25. And the reason I'm saying that is because there has to be enough of a reason to keep going. So from a compliance standpoint, that would give us 2 years, that the building's full, they have somebody actually operating a business, which I think, I understand that just, facade grants on their own, there's a public purpose because it enhances our community, but I think we've done that for a good amount. We've invested a good amount in that. And so when I look at, for the serving of a public purpose, I know that it qualifies, but I would feel better if there was a certificate of occupancy for a 2-year purpose. I think that would be easier for me to take out to a public and go, it's serving the public as opposed to we have a building that's sitting and it's improved, but nobody's in it. So if we went maybe 75-25 and shrank it to a 2-year, but bump the amount on the front end. I just would throw that off as a compromise.
I would interpret that to be a 1 year. They would get 75% at the completion of the project, and then 1 year later, they would get the remaining 25%.
That's probably better than what we have. I don't know if it's going to do anything than what's here. That might be. One thing I was thinking of, and I don't mean to get us off that subject, but if it goes to a tenant, maybe we could ask for a business plan so we could evaluate what their purpose is, and from that standpoint, ask when they're going to open and so forth, and tie that somehow to the grant so that they're not only encouraged, they're saying we're going to open within such and such a time, and they have to do it.
And one of the revisions was that we did ask for who the occupants are, who their planned occupants are of the, for the grant for that building. So we'll see that in the application.
But can we ask for a business plan? That's a whole different
Sure.
thing. Now, the owners of the building, their business plan is to, I would assume, to rent the building, so that's not who we're going to ask for the business plan.
Depends if the owner could be the business
if they're
owner.
occupying. If it's owner occupied, then the whole thing is not. But yeah, that we could ask it if they're going to occupy it themselves, then we could ask for a business plan before the grant, so we can see the viability of what they got going on. We've got all kinds of.
Everybody's lit up.
There you go. Go right ahead. You're next.
I like the vice mayor's idea. I'm really looking at this, hoping that it's a little bit of a carrot. Let's get moving. I think I know who Mr. Altif is talking about. Wants the $3,000. They're using our money. Let them at least pass it on to a tenant with the idea of getting a tenant in, or at least attempting to get a tenant in. So I sort of like the vice mayor's idea.
Okay. Member Leedy?
I'm just kind of back to where I was. I agree with Tom. I would just as soon we not address this tonight and let the staff come back with the first phase of some ideas of how we can encourage our absent landlords and tie this all together. I mean, we're not as I understand, we're not to the budget year yet on this program, right? Is that right, Tim?
Well, the budget year would start October 1st.
Okay. So we got another month. But the fact is that these folks have been coming every month asking us, not just the grant programs, but what is the city, we've had, what, a month ago, 2 months ago, the code department here, we haven't followed up with that, asking us to do something. And I think the two should be tied together.
Excuse me, sir, the code board will be going in front of council on the 28th with recommendations or solutions, and then we'll be coming back next month, is my understanding. Is that correct? That's right. Next month to the CRA. So yes, they're in the process, so we haven't forgotten.
Well, again, I think there just needs to be a kind of a comprehensive plan to deal with. I mean, we had a conversation about the gas stations here in town a month or two ago, and I subsequently heard that the state of Florida is willing to clean them up. I mean, and they're sitting there. So,
Kurt,
yes,
you're
sir.
getting not quite on this subject. Kurt,
anything
with,
I want, Mr. Mayor.
no, sir, you have to be germane to the subject. You're
I
going.
think the subject is what I'm saying is that I'd like to see that if you guys want to go ahead and do the program, go for it. I mean,
Kurt, I agree with you on the subject we're dealing with. I just don't want to go too far afield and get into a lot of other things. We've got to do this by 6:30. So, is there anything else you'd like to say? Member Stokel, join right in.
Yes. What's the time? You said October 1st. So what realistically would you want us to be passing some type of ordinance or plan?
We put a plug in the budget for $100,000. That's what this is for.
Okay.
But we don't have an implementation way yet. That's what we're
Correct.
asking for.
So, and ideally, you would want to have applications and stuff coming in now to be able to start awarding October 1st.
Well,
So
starting October 1st, yes, that would open up. The
it
applications
would open
will
up
come
at
in.
that point. So we would need to at least pass something by September, or would that be too late?
If you want it to be starting at the first of the fiscal year, there's nothing
Correct.
that says it
Yeah,
can't
that you-
go into the fiscal year
Right.
and start it. It just delays people getting grants. I spoke to a gentleman today who's looking at building a new building in downtown,
Mm-hmm.
and they are
Interested potentially in?
they're interested in the new construction grant, and he needs to know,
But you
as
don't
soon
have
as
that
possible.
information to give him
We
yet.
don't
Okay,
have
that's
that
what I'm
passed yet,
getting at.
so he has
Okay.
to wait until it gets approved.
Okay. I know, and just hearing the discussion back and forth, this one's a tough one for me because I see both sides and at how, I don't know, restrictive do we want to make it on that individual, that tenant, that owner, on what it is they actually have to be performing, where the other people in the downtown area are like, great, this is really adding benefit, or Vice Mayor mentioned, are they just kind of there, and how do we kind of figure that out and that balance? And I don't know. It's
It's a tough one.
it's very, very tough, and that's why I was kind of seeing how much time we had on it to find that happy medium. But it looks like we already have people interested, and I'd hate to turn people away that are wanting to build right there at this point. So I would like to try to get something passed. I don't think we need to be tabling it, so if we could decide on something, and then we could always come back if we need to, but, yeah.
Okay. The question is what? I'm convinced the way this is written, it's more confusing than it needs to be. I don't see it as encouraging anything. And I go back to the thing that Member Leedy and I both said, that they need the money when they start the project more than any other point, whether it's an owner or a tenant. So if somebody has a suggestion, we're not sure what that is at this point. But if you want to consider the 25% thing, but no.
25?
And how are we restricting that? I mean,
I think we said 75% after the first year, 25%.
Yeah, that second year.
Well,
hits.
actually, it'd be.
1 year.
Yeah.
It'd actually be 1 year, 75% when
Upfront.
it's occupied, and then the other 25% after the year.
That's how I understood it.
And do you want me? Well, you have other people.
I don't know.
no, that's fine. Member Stokel, you're through, right? Yeah. Okay. City Attorney?
As you're having the discussion, there's something you might want to think about. You know, you're talking about 75% upon occupancy. Well, how long do they have to achieve that occupancy? Because you may be tying up grant funds for a period of time that nobody has access to, only to have them forfeit it, and that grant money was never utilized. Or, you know, is it, you know, do they have 2 years to get occupancy from the day they complete it? Is it, and after they get 75%, is it must be completed with the 1 year to get the other 25 or you're forfeited, or do they have 3 years to get that 25%? I'm just not sure how the details of how that's going to work.
I would suggest, I'm going to jump in here, I hope nobody minds. I would say that occupancy, you have to have occupancy within a year of the building being, whatever the project is, being complete. You end up getting 75% of that grant when it's occupied, and a year later, as long as it remains occupied, you get the other 25%. But you're right, I give them a year to get there before they forfeit it.
Member Diesel?
There are certainly topics that I feel like I would speak more because I feel like I'm very knowledgeable. Haven't figured out those topics yet, but this is not one of them. And the reason I say that is I'm listening and I'm listening and I'm waiting for that magic play that's going to score the touchdown. And I think we're all trying to find that magic play. So when I read this, you know, on the agenda, I thought, well, that's the magic play. We'll go with that. And then, rightfully so, we have a couple members up here that say that's not the magic plan. They need the money up front. I'll be honest with you. If the merchants out there can tell me what's going to fill the buildings, that's what I'm willing to do. You know, you would note that it needs to be a priority. It's a priority. I just don't know what play to call. And I'm willing to do whatever's going to work. And I hear Member Stokel with the same frustration or almost an inadequacy. I don't have an answer. It's been a frustration. When I ran a couple of years ago, it's a frustration. It's a frustration now. I am willing to go 100% forward if that works, 75-25. But in the end, I think the mayor said it best, it's all about customers. Whatever it may be, we can do the right equation to get people in there, maybe, I hope so. But then to get them to stay, we've got to get some development to get customers, and in the end, that's going to be the ultimate answer. But you know, I'm all ears, and I'm bouncing back and forth here with what, you know, they make earlier, that was going to work. Member Leedy sounded good, the mayor's. I'm ready to go whatever direction's going to work to put people in the buildings. Somebody give me that.
Thank you. I'm going to jump in. Are we allowed to do advertising with the CRA grant? Can we advertise for the downtown?
Advertising, I think, has been frowned upon by the, say, those that are anti-CRA. They're saying that that money should be going through bricks and mortar and should not be going to advertising.
But that doesn't answer my question.
But
You mean just advertising the area in general, or advertising your grant?
Advertising the downtown and maybe having a list of merchants, all the merchants downtown, and you know.
You can do, and I think it's been determined that you can promote your CRA.
Yeah.
But I think that's, and as alluded to by Tim, in a limited way, in certain funds to promote the downtown. But if you have some things you're interested in, we can certainly look at that and come back to you just at the next meeting of ways you may think is appropriate to promote your downtown to attract business. Because as the Attorney General has said, it doesn't do much good to redevelop a downtown if nobody's there.
And we are promoting vacant properties and vacant buildings in the downtown, and we're seeing some fruits to that labor because we're getting some contacts about it. I've
Yeah,
had,
and-
two recently.
And that's good and fine, but I'm looking to how do we induce more people to come to these shops? Because I don't know how many people know what's down there even. They go elsewhere and don't come down all that often, except maybe on Friday night or something, but I think that's something we might look at. I'm going to jump in here one more time. We don't have a good idea of what we want to do. We can do something, as has been suggested, and I'll leave it up to you to make somebody to make a motion, but I wouldn't go too far, because whatever we're going to do, we're going to redo it, I have a feeling. So I'd like to see staff take what they've heard tonight, basically, and come up with a plan B. I know you don't like to hear that, but I don't think everybody agrees with you on staff about this being a good idea. So I think there's probably people that, not probably, I know there are people that don't like it as well. So I'm not putting you in a bad position, but you said you recommended it, and Ms. Pasaka, can I put you on the spot here? I know it's your job as staff, all of you, to respond to whatever council is instructions. And these are the instructions. What you came up with fills the instructions. But is it a good remedy for the problems? And Ms. Pasaka, you and I had a conversation on it the other day, and I'll let you speak for yourself.
Well, first of all, I think that there's lots of reasons why people don't rent out their buildings. Sometimes it has to do with federal tax law that you and I have nothing to do about. Sometimes it has to do with the fact that family are arguing with each other and we can't solve that. So I think that it is an interesting thought that we can force people to do something with their land, because they have many reasons for owning and keeping property vacant if that's what they choose. I think that if you're trying to encourage people, that by giving them a penalty, there's a chilling effect to that. I think that in this case, it's like if you owned a piece of property, would you want someone to tell you how to rent it out? And I think that a lot of you would say probably not. So that's my opinion.
Any questions for Ms. Pasaka?
I do.
Yes.
So Peggy, I understand what you're saying, because as a property owner, I wouldn't want people telling me what to do with my property. But I sort of looked at this as we've gone along and sort of along the same path and nothing has really changed, so why not try something different and see if it makes an impact? And I don't look at this as a penalty, I look at it sort of as the carrot, here you go, here's a carrot, if you want it, and not that you have to take.
And I see that perspective, but what we haven't done is ask the people with the vacant property why they're not renting them out. So
Okay.
why not go to the people who are not renting them out and find out why they're not being rented?
Well, I think we tried and they never showed up.
Well, yeah, but we invited them to a meeting. Perhaps it's our responsibility now to go to them and say, I'd like to make a phone call. Can I ask you, do you mind why this isn't rented? I've talked to realtors in the area, and some of them say that building has mold in it. And until the mold gets repaired, no one's going to rent it. Well, I can't tell that by driving by.
Yeah, that's true.
And this grant actually helps that, because that is a building code issue that we can resolve. So I think that we haven't gotten enough information to make a good decision on how to incentivize this.
Okay, I hear you. I hear you. How long would it take to do that?
Well, it doesn't take long to make a phone call, but it's whether or not we get a response. And so I would think that it would take at least a month. It may take 2. by the time we get a reasonable number of responses. We could certainly contact realtors who may have some familiarity with the building or the property owners if we can't contact the property owner.
Okay.
So in the interim, we just stay under the system here, is that what you're suggesting, or?
What makes me nervous is if you were to adopt something with the intent you can go back and change it, because if someone comes into one set of rules and you change them, it's very confusing. So if you're going to give someone a grant for that may take a couple of years, I think it's a bad idea to change it. Either make up your mind that's what you like and prepare to live with it for a while, or give yourself some time. Because if you give, well, I had 2 kids, and I know what happened when I gave one of them the beater with all the icing and one without. The one without was pretty ticked. And that's how it might feel to the people who 1 month gets one type of grant and the next month it's the same exact grant, but the rules are all different. And again, I believe that most developers and most people who own property like consistency. That gives them a level of comfort. They can plan, they can move forward.
I'm wondering if the merchants downtown have talked to some of these owners.
It's possible we could certainly speak with them about that. I know that Mr. Ford has an excellent working relationship with many of them and could find out. But I think that if that's what you're trying to do, we ought to ask the people who are involved why they're not renting things out.
Well, I'm just wondering if we could shortcut that by either asking Tom or Gretchen what the people have told them about why these buildings aren't rented out. I don't know if they have an answer. That might help.
Vice Chairman?
Thank you. So
Peggy, I'm sorry, one of the members has a question.
I was pretty certain that the last time anybody would ask me a question. Yes, sir.
So to summarize kind of what you said is kind of what Tom was saying, is that we need to reach out to these fee simple owners, find out why they're not renting their property, tell them what the city's thinking about these programs, and get their feedback before we decide on something and then go back and change it 5 months from now.
Well, if that's the people you're trying to reach, then I would contact them.
Right.
If you're trying to reach a different audience, then I would contact them.
Well, I'm talking about some of the buildings downtown, and like I mentioned earlier, that one of the gas stations is empty. The owner lives in Jacksonville, probably in the state of Florida is ready to clean it. Now the question is, why is it sitting there? And that, to me, to get those answers, which certainly is what you're saying, would help us try to make some kind of public policy as to.
And it may not be easy.
Right.
These people may not want to talk to Tim Ford or Peggy Busacca about their financial. I don't know. But I know that right now, at least I don't know why they're not renting them.
Okay.
And I know that there's a lot more related to how business works than just the regulations in the city. There's federal laws, there's state laws, there's
Right.
all kinds of reasons people do things or don't do things.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Chairman?
Yeah, so that's a lot. So first off, I don't think we're looking at a binary choice. So I don't think it necessarily has to be this or that, but I think that we are. I believe it's to be at a point where we need to make a choice. I think we're currently at paralysis analysis. That's what I think we're at. But if the policy is just beyond comfort, I understand perspectives, but I think we're probably what's being proposed either as is or modified, even suggested proposal, and I'm open to some kind of suggestion for modification, but I think we're in the ballpark on compromise on that. And here's why, is that where I respect the idea that this specifically as a program has a potential of a chilling effect for an investor. I think there's probably, we have a lot of history. This isn't brand new. The idea of fixed building, occupied building for a better tax base, I think is not new. I think we've been doing it, at least for a facade grant. Like this CRA dishing out money to get business, that we've been doing this a long time. So if what we have, let's just say a decade, if we measure the past decade, we have a decade of investment of a consistent policy. I'm just saying, as a member, I am currently not satisfied with the result we are achieving. We are 1,000 times better than where we were, but I think that the game has changed. It's a different field, and the field we now have left are everybody will rent their building for enough money. I think everybody will rent for enough money. The threshold for enough money is from A to Z on what I would consider reasonable, and when we talk about whether or not it's good or not, at the end of it, the only reason that I think the CRA, in my opinion, is really getting money is because the historical preservation of the downtown area is of such an intrinsic value to our community that the upgrade of the buildings are warranted to preserve the character of our community. If somebody is not willing to upgrade and use, then we're in museum collection. And I am not line iteming a budget that amount of money for a museum collection. I think the buildings need to function as a business if that's what they're intended to do. Otherwise, it's not really meeting what I would consider the intent of why we're giving out money for buildings. That being said, where I understand a carrot and a stick, we have carroted people for 10 years, and our result is what we have in some form or fashion. So I'm comfortable with that. As far as a clawback, I'm just not longer. I'm no longer okay with handing it out and congratulations, you upgraded your building. And Mayor, I totally agree with you that there have been multiple businesses that have come because of that. But I think we're past that, not totally, but I think we've advanced far enough on that objective that the next one is, I am not comfortable with giving any more money to somebody who is not going to do the entire deal, which is get a business in the building, get it going, and keep it there. And if it's cost prohibitive is because they're charging so much for rent, then you're no longer serving a public purpose. Then it's just not functioning for why I think that this money is to be used. And that's why I'm, at a minimum, I'm okay with this, but I totally am in agreement with the ideas that were proposed. And I would rather move forward with this and give this a 3-year run, a 4-year run, let it cycle and let it go and give it a wash. See if something different happens. If not, I think we're going to come back and I think we're going to be doing this more. And my biggest concern with that is that I think we have something that's a reasonable objective that could be an effective tool that meets a lot of the concerns that were raised. But in absence of moving forward this, I think the example of having 1, 2, 3, 4 more items on the CRA that we're not getting to in a timely manner continues to happen. And that cycle I've seen from previous councils, and I have no desire to return to that kind of cycle. So if we're really just stuck on like fundamental difference, I get it. I would say go up or down on it. But I definitely don't want to start getting into analysis to death and then we come to a grinding halt as a governing body. That I would hope to avoid.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I do have one comment. I can't disagree with much of what you said, but when you say we're going to tell people what to rent their property for, I don't know how we could even start to do that. I don't think it's even legal. It's their property. if they want, or the house or anything else. If we go around saying you've got to rent it for this, that's not part of our free enterprise system. So, and you are always the biggest on the free enterprise system, so.
Very much so.
So that part of it I don't agree with. Member Leedy, your light is on. Do you have something else to say? No? Okay. What's your pleasure at this point? I leave it open to council.
I'll make a motion to adopt the policy with the modifications from Member Nelson, which I believe was 75% after completion of construction, with the remaining 25% to be granted 1 year after, is it 1 year of occupancy? Is that, Mr. Ford, is that about right?
Do I have a second?
Second.
Having a motion and a second. Any discussion? You don't have any? I'd like a roll call on this. If you
Mayor,
will.
could I ask one question? How long, the 1 year of occupancy, is that, must be occupied within the following year? Is that, I want to be clear. Because it just said 25% upon the first year of occupancies.
And we said we set a time limit that it had to be occupied within that year from the time the building was complete.
Okay. Roll call.
Member Diesel?
Yes.
Member Nelson?
Yes.
Chairman Johnson?
No.
Vice Chairman Behringer?
Yes.
Member Stokel?
Yes.
Passes with 2 dissensions, myself and Member Leedy. Next item, Cafe Chocolat. Sir.
Yes, sir. Pursuant to the 2011 grant agreement relating to Cafe Chocolat, the Community Redevelopment Agency is entitled to reimbursement in the amount of $8,176.10. At the November 14, 2017 CRA meeting, Ms. Davis requested that the CRA withhold demand for payment and waive the debt in its entirety. At this meeting, the city attorney opined that the language in the agreement seems clear and that the clock for reimbursement of the funds would begin following the receipt of the grant funds. And furthermore, the CRA board members are trustees of the fund dollars with fiduciary duties of those funds. The CRA voted to deny the waiver for repayment. City staff has subsequently continued to correspond with the debt and demand of payment in full. On June 30th, 2018, payment was made in the amount of $176.10, leaving a balance of $8,000. On July 11, 2018, the city attorney received a settlement offer from Ms. Davis to settle this debt for $4,000. And staff is recommending that the CRA board review the attached document and request from Ms. Davis to settle the remaining debt relating to the property known as Cafe Chocolat in the amount of $4,000.
I'll open it up for discussion. I don't see anybody saying anything. Go right, yeah.
Sure. I would entertain the idea of the settlement for $4,000, and here's why. Where I believe, I would entertain the idea for the $4,000 settlement, and the following reasons are why. I think that I think that within any kind of contract that is a financial contract in the amount that is a substantial amount, the documents are probably best handled by lawyers on both parties. For the idea that I think that with that legal guidance, very often oversights or interpretation can be hashed out prior to signing, and I think that you tend to get more of this done on the front end. Being said, I also believe that the majority of our grants have not been done with in such a manner. And I think just systemically, we've gone this long way. We've had a very good run without really running into any hitches in language, what I believe. I think that this is a hitch in language. I don't necessarily agree with the fault of interpretation to the city, but I could believe how it could be construed as the public as a fault from the city. And because of that, I'll give some credence to kind of meet in the middle at the halfway mark.
I'm not sure what you're suggesting.
That,
We have a lawyer.
correct.
We can't force somebody else if they don't want to have a lawyer to have a lawyer.
I think that would be, and it would be time for a different discussion. I would agree with that, but possibly from a policy adoption, maybe that's something to take a look at, that the documents need to be prepared by a legal official or somebody in the legal field.
Well, the documents are prepared.
For us, but from the person or the applicant.
It's from us for them.
Correct. I guess where I'm going is there's two parties to a contract. If one has a lawyer who writes the contract, I think sometimes the other portion or party to the contract, that there's an opportunity for some confusion there.
We can recommend.
Sure.
It certainly, but we can't tell them you have to have a lawyer or we won't do it. I don't believe. Can we do that? No.
No, they certainly have a right to hire an attorney and review any document before they sign it, and I'd be glad to
Absolutely.
speak with any attorney on that. But they're not required to, no. And then again, I'd wonder what language we believe is vague, because I think the contract was clear as to the obligation in this case.
And on this contract, as I understand it, there were two things that, of different times at the end, and one was for 2,000, one was for 1,600. The 2,000 had to be done at a certain point, and it was within a day or two, and I agree with that. That could be confusing, and we should give them that part. The second part was like a month later or 2 months later.
Do you want me to address that?
Yes, sir, please.
Ms. Davis is here, so as I go through this, if you disagree, if you want to add to that, certainly please come up and do that. There was under this agreement, it was a 5-year period of time in which they need to maintain ownership of the property. And that 5 years ran from the time that funds were received. There was 3 different times that funds were received under my review of the documents. In July 2013, there was $5,018.50 received. August of 2013, $11,737 received. In November of 2013, $6,195 received. And there'd be an obligation of 5 years from each date that it was received. In July of 2017, the Davises sold the property. Based on that, the $5,018.50, there was a 20% payback because that was 4 years, and it descended 20% each year. So that was $1,003.70. The $11,737, had they closed 1 month later, not July but in August, rather than owe 40%, which is $4,694, that would have been cut in half a month later. And that would have put them at $2,347.40. And had they closed in November, the $6,195 debt would have been cut from 40% to 20%, which would have been $2,478. So just based upon the construction of the contract and the payback period of five years, the current debt obligation is $8,176.50. That's what we requested. Of course, the board looking at that, if there was confusion, Ms. Davis, with the 1 month, had she closed a month later, of course, that would have reduced the obligation by $2,347. That would bring you down to $5,829. And so I just want to let you know those are the facts. There's 3 payment terms. In my opinion, it's fairly clear as to when it was due. I can't speak for Ms. Davis. She may not have thought about that at the time. Might have lost sight about where the time was. I think the contract was clear. But I just want you to know that's where we were. Had she closed 1 month later, that debt would have been reduced by $2,347 and take the debt down to, like I said, to $5,800. Had she closed in November, that debt would have been further reduced by another $2,000. So
what was the the one that was done right on closing?
Correct. Had she closed, rather than July of 2017, had she closed on the property and sold it in August of 2013, the debt wouldn't be $8,000, it'd be $5,829.
And so the difference in on that was how much?
$2,347.40.
Yeah, if you will, bear with me for a minute. That's what I'm suggesting, because that's reasonable. You know, Ms. Davis, we have a very slippery slope here.
Yes, sir.
Legally, if we start doing this arbitrarily, the next person will want more, and the next person will want more, and we are guardian of the taxes of all these people here. So there is some justification I can see on that amount, and I would go along with that. Beyond that, I would have to vote against it.
I understand. I obviously misunderstood that receipt of funds was the day the contract was executed, and we had a couple extensions. I understand that. So I didn't know particularly when what was due, but I did contact the city, and I did ask what the payoff was. And when I went to closing, nothing showed up, because I honestly thought we didn't presume to close on July 10th. That's just when it happened. But if I had any inkling that I needed to wait a month, I would have delayed that closing by another month. But the fact it was not recorded by the city, I think what I'm offering is a fair request, and that's why I'm asking that you consider it.
Correct. The document typically would be recorded. It was a different staff. I can't speak for the staff at the time, but the document wasn't recorded, so when it went to closing, the lead wasn't there. In my opinion, of course, that doesn't affect the validity of the contract. The debt's still owed. It's just we would have got paid at closing rather than having to seek this payment at this time from Ms. Davis. And my only remedy to seek payment if I don't get payment is an action in county court for the $8,000, which would filing fees and time, of course, involved with that.
So I'm asking that, you know, I submitted a letter, and I'm just asking that you reduce it to the $4,000. There's a little bit of difference there in interpretation, but I think that's fair based on what has happened. And so I am requesting that you reduce it to the $4,000 instead of the $5,000.
Thank you, ma'am. Member Nelson?
I saw Ms. Davis the other night, and I explained to her that we have been periodically under attack, the CRA.
I can appreciate that.
And I tend to agree with the mayor that we could turn around and act as if this happened in August, because I think if you knew that this was there, you would have closed in August.
Or later.
Or later. And I think
may have not sold the building at all.
You might not have sold the building at all, but I think we can get away with that. And I think that's justifiable.
Well, I hear you.
Think going further.
After I spoke with this, I'm
sorry.
I
don't know. I think going further is risking some setbacks to the CRA, which obviously we don't want to see. So I tend to agree with the mayor.
Please.
Okay, thank you. I understand where you're coming from, but it put me in a very awkward and a bad situation. Number one, I want to say that without the CRA's assistance, that downtown property would never have been gutted out on the first floor, the windows replaced, and $1 million put into it by us. $1 million that I went into debt. And then, of course, when we sold it, I gave up a lot of money. So, you know, that's my cry story. But the bottom line is there's not a lot of money left on my side. And so I respectfully, after speaking with the city attorney, he obviously cannot make that decision, but you as a board can make that decision. And I'm asking in this case that you consider, you know, the request that I made from $4,000. I chose not to take a legal route because I'm grateful for what the city has done for me. But again, I am requesting that you at least consider that it would be no more than the $4,000. I can deal with that.
Member Diesel, are you through?
Yes.
Member Diesel?
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Mayor. I had started off looking at this at it's a balance of $8,000. Her thought was $4,000. I thought, you know, obviously the middle would be $6,000. But I think that based on the city attorney's understanding and your understanding of missing it by a month, et cetera, I think that we could go, and what is that amount?
$5,829,
Okay.
Well,
5,800.
Again, that would have to be reduced by any payments already made. I think she's already made $176, so
I was
it would be
starting
reduced
to make
further by that
payments.
amount.
But then then I spoke with the city attorney, and I decided to try to do a settlement instead.
Well, and again, early in this discussion, the word came up, slippery slope, and I think that we start doing these discussions and negotiations. I think that the numbers that we're throwing out there now are as good as we can get, because I would have gone 6,000 in the middle. That's what I would have shot for.
Right.
So I would go with the mayor's words.
Right, and I want everyone to understand, this money was used to redevelop the property. This is
Yes.
just the terms of our grant about maintaining the property. So I don't want any misunderstanding that we gave money that wasn't, it was all used to redevelop the property. Okay.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
I see no more lights, so who'd like to make a motion? And please ask the attorney for the exact number.
I'll make the motion, I'll attempt to make the motion.
Okay.
I move that we set the amount as if the contract took place in August, that amount, minus the payment that she had already made, which I would assume is around $5,700. Is that
Okay.
correct?
Right, so the 40% payback that would be due for the August would be reduced to 20%.
Mm-hmm.
And then credit for the money already paid.
Correct.
I believe that's what you just said.
Yes, and I think that should be roughly around $5,700 if I'm correct. Okay, that would be my motion.
Do I have a second?
I would suggest if you are going to reduce amounts and work with, that there ought to be a time established for repayment. In other words, if you're going to settle for a lesser amount, it ought to include a time within which payment should be received.
Oh, like, how long would you suggest?
Yeah.
Are you
I
talking
know
about a
she's-
month or what?
Right, it could be 30, whatever this
30
board feels
days?
appropriate. I wouldn't go beyond 30 days, but I would think there ought to be a time associated with which that offer is extended.
Would you like to put that in your motion?
I would like to see what you guys have recommendations, or perhaps from Ms. Davis to see what, if she has an idea in mind of how quickly you could get the payment in.
I'll handle it from this end. I'll see this thing.
30
Okay,
days.
so 30 days, then I'll put that in.
For the second
And
hold?
30 days, but I would also ask if you give me the authorization to extend that, and we'll negotiate if necessary for a short period of time to work with Ms.
Is that
Davis.
in your motion?
Yes, correct.
Second hold? Okay, that's all in there. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, like sign, passes unanimously.
Mayor, could I also ask for authorization in the event that payment is not received, that I'm authorized to do whatever's necessary to seek collection?
We'll do a separate motion on that?
Since the other motion's already been voted on, if
Yeah, do a separate motion on that.
authorization, right, that if I'm,
I'm asking Member Stokel, would she do the motion on that?
I move that the city attorney can move forward and has the authorization to do what he needs to do to collect payment.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say yes. Yes. Any opposed, like sign, passes unanimously. Next item.
Yes, sir. Staff requests that we table item 8A.
Okay, thank you. B,
And we'll, time certain will be at the next CRA.
I'm sorry.
Time certain will be at the next CRA.
Okay. Need a motion for that? Can I have a motion for time certain for the item A will be at the next CRA meeting?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion, Member Stokel, second it. Let her get that one, okay? All those in favor say yes. Yes. Any opposed? Passes unanimously.
Item 8B, attached for the board's review and consideration is an application for commercial interior building renovation grant from Nancy Abner of Abner Properties LLC to assist in the renovation of a building located at 322 South Washington Avenue in the downtown historic district. The application appears to meet the goals and objectives of the Commercial Interior Building Renovation Grant Program and the Titusville Redevelopment Plan, by preventing further deterioration of properties in the CRA, stimulating renewed interest and investment in the district, and preserving the traditional historic retail district as a location for convenient pedestrian, visitor, commercial activities that are compatible with the CRA master plan, and encourages the utilization of existing historic building stock. Staff recommends you approve the award of a commercial interior building renovation grant in the amount of $28,097 to Nancy Abner of Abner Properties LLC for the property located at 322 South Washington Avenue.
Member Leedy, you have a light lit?
Question for the staff. Is this money comes out of this year's budget or the one after October?
This is this year's.
So the terms and conditions of this will be under the current rules and not the one we passed tonight?
Correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'll accept the motion. Somebody would like to make one?
Move to approve the award of a commercial interior building renovation grant in the amount of $28,097 to Nancy Abner for property located at 322 South Washington Avenue.
Second.
I have a motion and a second from Member Stokel. Any further discussion? All those in favor say yes.
Yes. Yes.
Any opposed, like sign, passes unanimously. Are there any petitions from the, or requests from the public at this point that someone would like to speak? Mr. Altiff?
Tom Altiff, 410 South Hopkins, Titusville, Florida. I'm passing out 3 documents. 2 of them deal with the former service station next to City Hall, and the other one deals with 405 Garden Street. It appears as if, from doing some research, that the state of Florida has taken on the responsibility of remediation. Therefore, I don't see any reason why both of these structures are still standing. And I'm asking this council to go ahead and either encourage the property owners to remove the structures, which are a blight on our community. They're on gateways to our community. One on Garden Street that is used by anybody going to the beach on the weekend, and the other right here on Washington. I see no reason why this can't be enforced. And if the property owners refuse to take the buildings down, why the city doesn't take the buildings down and put liens on the property, because the city doesn't have anything to lose. The other document I handed out was a document regarding the city of Winter Garden. And it has some interesting statistics in it. The city has seen an approximate 90% downtown occupancy rate, average revenue for downtown businesses of $470,000, and these are 2010 numbers. So it shows that it can be done, that a renovation downtown can be done. It's profitable to the property owners, and it's also profitable to the city. They gained in value 210%, 215%. The other thing I have to say is that the city tells me every day what I can do with my property, every day. So when I hear someone say that the city shouldn't be involved in what a person can do with their property, I have to look at myself. There's been many things I've wanted to do with my property, and the city has said no. So I don't think that argument is a valid argument in regards to seeing what we can do about improving downtown and passing ordinances that have some effect. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I will point, you can, this is not a question.
Okay.
I will point out to you, though, that those are code enforcement, and they are for everybody. They're not for particular properties, and we're not telling them what to do with their property other than to keep it to the level of code enforcement. It's not that we're going telling somebody you got to do this or that. The other thing is, I really love what you brought up here about Winter Garden. You know why I won't ask you this question. I know why those properties are worth more, because when they were going nowhere, because they used to have a railroad going through there, small railroad that picked up oranges and fruit and veggies and so forth. When those businesses or those industries went out of favor in that area, they had, what was left was the train trail there. They took it apart. They made a bike trail out of it. The people that are going there are the people that will go here at one time. And we did go over there, and they've been doing it for 10 years, so they've got a big jump on us, but they've got one trail. We're actually going to have 4 trails, all converging here, one going across, one going north and south, one going out, and a loop going all the way up. I think that's where our customers are going to come, and you just made my point for me, sir, and I appreciate that. Anybody else like to speak?
I have a request. I'm actually looking for a lifeline. My name is Leslie Lapone. I'm the owner of Lapone Enterprise, the golf cart dealership located at 503 Cheney Highway. It's the corner of 50 and Sisson. Just background information. I have a code enforcement issue on the property. A complaint was filed by my competitor.
Ma'am, this is the CRA meeting, not the council meeting. I just want to let everybody know we're still in CRA.
Okay, I'll wait.
Sorry, ma'am. I didn't know what she was coming up with. Anyone else like to speak? I see no one else. I will declare this meeting adjourned. You got one more?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Kind of anxious.
Yes, sir. The executive director's report as written. I'd like to add one other item. The charging stations were installed at the Welcome Center. There are two charging stations there as CRA requested, and additional charging stations are being planned for the marina. And a reminder that our budget workshop is tomorrow, starting at 5 o'clock, and we will be discussing CRA issues at that budget workshop. Completes my report.
Thank you, sir. I apologize for jumping you like that. At this point, I will call this meeting adjourned. We will reconvene at 7:15.